We're in the days before Shavuos. It's Motzei Shabbos, Parshas Bechukoisai. The days before Shavuos, in the days after Lag BaOmer, and the tragedy, Rahman al-Slan, of Lag BaOmer of Meiron, in the waning days of the COVID pandemic. What's the lesson to be learned, to be taken out from these unique times that we live in? We have the parsha of Parshas Bechukoisai that talks about the Teicha. It talks about the admonishment, the Musar, the things, the terrible things, Rahman al-Slan, that will befall Klal Yisrael if they don't listen to the mitzvahs Hashem, if they don't observe the Torah. And we have in Parshas Kisavai a parsha that seems to mirror this parsha Bechukoisai. Also talks about the Teicha in Parshas Kisavai. Why the repetition? Secondly, there are some differences between the two parshas and some nuances that are different. And why the difference? And what are the differences? There's a very Yesodistic Ramban who mentions a very fundamental principle, that the Teichacha in Parshas Bechukoisai is the Nevuah, refers to what will befall Klal Yisrael at the time of Churban Bayis Rishon. That's primarily the Nevuah of Parshas Bechukoisai. The Teicha of Parshas Kisavai is a reference to what will happen in the Golus after Churban Bayis Sheni, the Golus that we are living in at this time right now. So they're referring to two distinct periods of time where the Averos that Klal Yisrael committed were different, and the punishments were somewhat different as well. Now in Parshas Kisavai we have a pasuk that we don't have in Parshas Bechukoisai that says as follows: Im lo yishmer la'asos es kol divrei haTorah hazos haksuvim b'sefer hazeh liyiras Hashem hanichbad v'hanoy razeh Hashem Elokecha. If you don't keep all the divrei Torah, im lo yishmer la'asos es kol divrei haTorah hazos haksuvim. If you don't keep all of it. So it's interesting. Why does the Torah stress that if you don't keep as kol divrei Torah? The punishments that befall Klal Yisrael are not only if they don't keep all of the Torah. The punishments are if they don't even some of the mitzvahs. Churban Bayis Rishon was for the Gimel Averos Chamuras. Why does it stress over here the emphasis you don't keep kol as kol divrei Torah says? The pasuk continues, says, "V'hifla Hashem es makoischa v'es makois zarecha makis gedolos v'ne'amonis v'chaloim roim v'ne'amonim." There'll be terrible, terrible makis chas v'sholom. Makis gedolos v'chaloim roim v'ne'amonim. Terrible disease, terrible sicknesses and disease, things that you never saw before. V'hifla Hashem es machol. There'll be unusual. There'll be wondrous, unusual, things that you've never seen before. Diseases, pandemics. V'hiflos Hashem atzmat koisa, there'll be chaloim, roim, v'ne'amonim. Something strange, unheard of, unusual. Disease, pandemics. V'heishiv b'chas kol mad v'mitzrayim asher gortu pneim v'davku bach v'gam kol choyli v'kol mag asher lo yikosu b'teva v'sefer haTorah hazos yalem Hashem alech v'ad hisham dach. Even all the sicknesses and diseases that are not written in the Torah, things that people never heard about, people that are unusual, strange, weird, things that we never heard about, were never recorded, will chas v'sholom befall. Pandemics. So it seems pretty clear that the Torah is saying that if Klal Yisrael does not keep the Torah, ba'achris hayomim, this is written at the end of the Teicha in Parshas Kisavai, the end of the Teicha in Parshas Kisavai, which is a reference to the Golus that we are experiencing at the end of the Teicha, which seems to be a reference to the end of the Golus Ba'achros Hayamim, the time before Mashiach, there will be these terrible sicknesses, these diseases, these pandemics, Ba'achros Hayamim. But why does it say if you don't keep all of the Torah Hazos? Now, what's very interesting and unusual is that the Gemara in Brochus says on this pasuk Darshan the following. The pasuk, the Gemara in Shabbos rather, in Daf Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Beis. In Masechus Shabbos Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara says, the Rav says, Asida Teira Shetistakach Mi Yisrael, that the an Achras Hayomim Rahman al-Islam, the Torah will be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael will forget the Torah. Torah will be forsaken and forgotten. Shenemar, and it quotes this pasuk that we just mentioned, the Teicha, V'hifla Hashem es ma'koischa. V'hifla Hashem es ma'koischa. So it's the lotion of V'hifla. Hafla zu ein yedei mahu. What is this lotion of hafla? What does it mean, hafla? Kishu omer lachein hineni Yosef lahafli esasem hamazeh hafle v'fela. The pasuk in Yeshaya says that Hani Yosef lahafli es hamazeh hafle v'fela, do wondrous, unusual, strange things to this nation. Havi omer hafluza Torah. It means Torah. Why does it mean Torah? Because the end of the pasuk says v'av the chachmas chachma v'vinas nevoinav tistater. Because the wisdom of the wise will be forgotten. So therefore, V'hifla is a reference to forgetting the Torah. There's a reference, there's a remez in this Teicha that one of the punishments that will befall Klal Yisrael is forgetting the Torah, that they will forget Torah Tishtach Yisrael. What is the connection between forgetting Torah and a makkah, the punishments for forsaking the Torah? The last thing the Rabbeinu Shalom wants is to us forsake the Torah. Why is it a punishment that if we forsake the Torah, Chas v'Shalom, that the Torah will be forgotten from us? That's the last thing the Rabbeinu Shalom wants, is that we should forget the Torah, and that's one of the punishments, that we will forget the Torah. If we don't keep all of the mitzvahs, that we will forget the Torah will be Tishtach Yisrael. In actual fact, the Gemara brings down a machlokes in the Brayso. They said Torah will be forgotten, but Rav Shimon ben Yochai, Tanya Rav Shimon ben Yochai, Omer Chas v'Shalom shetishtach Torah Yisrael. Chas v'Shalom, Torah will never be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. They will never forget the Torah. Shenemar ki lo tishtach mipi zarai. The Torah will never be forgotten. Elamani mekayim. Ma would have this party shtayt to levakish dvar Hashem v'leim so shlo yimsu halacha brura u'mishna brura v'makim echad. Torah will not be forgotten, but they won't find halacha brura mishnah brura makim echad, meaning, as Rashi says, that there'll be machlekes v'tamim shlo yeh ba'machlekes. They won't find halacha brura mishnah brura, that there won't be machlekes. There'll be machlekes. In actual fact, it fits into the lotion of the pasuk v'hifla Hashem es ma'koisa. Hina Yosef lahafla zam hafla v'fela hafla hafla a nozir. But the pasuk uses the lotion by a nozir. Ish ki yafla lindar neder lahazir nazir laHashem. Also by the nozir. A nozir is separated from people. He's ostracized. He's cut off. He's separated from people. That's the lotion of a flaw. There'll be machlekes. There won't be consensus. There'll be a time in Klal Yisrael where there won't be a consensus. And there was a time when Klal Yisrael had the Sanhedrin and they had the Bezdin Agogol, there was a clear Hayrah, there was a clear direction, there was a clear Halacha Brura, a Mishnah Brura. It was clear what the Halacha was, what the timing were. There will be a time b'achras hayamim when that no longer will be the case. Why? Rav Shimon ben Yochai is telling us something. He's speaking to us. He's telling us something. That b'achras hayamim there'll be machlekes amongst the Talmidei Chachamim. They won't find halacha brura and a mishnah brura with malkim echad. What does this have to do with the teicha? Perhaps the pshat is as follows: that the teicha is talking at a time that if you don't keep all kol haterazos, meaning there's a remez, there's a reference. Not only is it talking to the blatant violators of the Torah, the people that violate the Torah in an often way, in a blatant way, or they violate the halachas of the Torah, they don't keep the halachas of the Torah, whether it's b'shogeg or the mezeh, but there's a reference as well to those who do keep the Torah. But they don't keep kol ha-Torah, they don't keep it me'alef ha-taf, even a reference to the Talmidei Chachamim. Even the people who do keep the Torah, who are shomer the Torah, but they don't keep all of it. And perhaps there's parts of the Torah that even Talmidei Chachamim don't keep. And that perhaps there's certain mitzvahs ben adam l'chaveirei that we don't all keep. Perhaps we trample on other people and other people's kavod and other people's rights and their dignity. Perhaps there's machlokes. So the punishment, the einish for machlokes is machlokes, is period. If we trample on other people, then we will be trampled on. The Rabbi Shalom says that if you don't keep kol ha-Torah zoyis, all of the machla, all the choli, there'll be sicknesses that aren't even written in this Torah, that even aren't recorded. There'll be new diseases and pandemics that will cause a period, that will cause people to have to separate from each other, to isolate from each other, to quarantine from each other. They won't be able to come together. They won't be able to come together for simchas. They won't be able to hug and kiss each other. Because if there are machlokes, the punishment is machlokes. And there's a reference as well, even Rahman al-Islam, to those who are shomer Torah mitzvahs. But if they don't keep kol ha-Torah zois, if you don't keep all of it, and if there are parts of it that they are not careful with, in bein adam l'chavera, if they trample on other people, chas v'sholem, Rav Shimon ben Yochai is speaking to us and telling us, if you don't come together, you won't be able to come together. Chas v'sholem, Torah will never be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. It will never be chas v'sholem, lo tishtachach Torah. It will never be forgotten. But there won't be halacha brura and a mishnah brura v'makim echad. There won't be a consensus. If there's machlokes, if there's pirud, the einish is that there will be pirud. And if we trample on other people, chas v'sholem, the einish is that people will be trampled on. This past Lag B'Omer, Rav Shimon ben Yochai spoke to us. On his day, on Lag B'Omer, we came together. We came together as one. Hasidim, Misnagdim, Svardim, Ashkenazim, old and young, Charedim, modern Orthodox, we all came together. But, Rahman al-Islam, we were trampled upon. On his day, on the day of Rav Shimon ben Yochai, we had a message that we have to come together in a different manner. We're in the days before Shuas, before the days of Shuas, of Matan Torah. The day of Matan Torah, Chag Shuas, and we're facing in Eretz Yisrael, in Artzeinu HaKadosh, the threat of those that want to trample upon the Torah HaKadosh, chas v'sholem. Shimon Chai is saying, chas v'sholem, lo tishtakach, Torah will never be forgotten. The other Tanoim said, Asira Torah shtishtakach mi Yisrael. Rabbi Shimon Chai says, chas v'sholem. But there are threats. And before the day of Kabbalas HaTorah, before Shuas, we're facing a threat in Eretz Yisrael, Artzeinu Kadosh, from those in position of power who want to form a coalition to trample on the Torah. Chas v'shalom. The call is to be shomer the kol haTorah. Not only what we find geschmack, what we find pleasant and appealing, and what's convenient, but the whole Torah. Even the parts that may appear difficult, even the parts that stand in the way of other things that we're seeking, kavod that we're seeking, pleasures that we're seeking, whatever it may be, but it's kol haTorah. The bein adam l'chaveirei, the precious that was required, the kedusha, the tahara that's required for the Torah HaKadesha. The precious from the olam hatuma that surrounds us, from all of that infringes, encroaches, creeps into our world, to our kedusha and tahara of our bias, of our batim, of our maistas, of our heilige maistas and our heilige batim. The Rebbeinu Shalom should help us. We should be strong to go forward, b'emunah b'tocha, but go higher, better, pure, kedusha v'tahara, the Kabbalah Satayah. The Rebbeinu Shalom should answer our tefillas, and we should be makabel, be zeichet in makal pnei Mashiach